All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Pershing. I'm a director of software engineering at 1010 Data. I'll be using this session to go over some of the enhancements and the updates that my team has built into the tools you use to programmatically connect to 1010. So a problem, maybe some feedback that we've gotten from many of you, probably some of the people in the room, is that some of our tools, they require an extra layer wrapped around them to really be the best that they can be. We got a lot of tools where maybe the interface doesn't feel like what you wanted it to feel in that type of context. We have things where it needs an extra layer of automation for it to be as useful as you want it to be. So what we've done is we've taken this feedback, we've rebuilt some of our tools from the ground up. Others, we've added that extra layer so that each individual person does not have to do that automation. And now we're happy to announce a few new products, some things that were released earlier this year. We're going to be telling you all about them. What you're going to get from this is you're going to get new features and functionality. You're at the general session. You've seen a lot of breakouts, a lot of cool new features of 1010. So now you can access those in your programmatic interfaces. The more intuitive interface and handling some of that automation for you, this is going to make it so that you, your colleagues, are going to have a better time connecting with the system. It's going to be easier. It's going to save you time. Time is money, so let's move forward. I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over broadly what interfaces 1010 has to offer. I want to spend most of my time talking about updates, though. I want to go over the new things we've added, things that we've changed. I'll be talking about what things are going to look like in the next couple of quarters, and I'll take questions at the end. So let's take a look at the state of the union as far as interfaces go. Here we've got, on the left, some data sources. It could be flat files, other databases. On the right, we have some things you might want to connect to 1010 Data. We've got 1010 in the middle. So the Power Loader, this is a tool for loading flat file data into 1010 Data. So this is CSV and TSV, fixed width, that type of data. So the Power Loader, from an automation perspective, it's a tool in the UI some of you might have used. But if you're automating around it, this is one of those things that takes some extra work. It's you're connecting to it via our HTTP API, and you're going to use XML to articulate whether you want to start the load, check on it, that sort of thing. We have 10up. 10up is a tool that will plug into other databases, uses the ODBC standard to speak to those databases. Pretty much every database out there has an ODBC driver, so 10up is going to be able to talk to pretty much all of them. You run a query, you give 10up a query, it runs it in the source system, takes the result, puts it in as a new table in 1010. We have Tendu. Tendu is really the Swiss Army knife of programmatic interactions with 1010. The most baseline use case for it is going to be connecting, is running a query on 1010 and pulling the result down as a flat file on your source system. But we also have a whole lot of other functionality in Tendu. You want to delete an object in the system. I want to save a result as a new temp table. I want to change the attributes of an existing object in 1010. Tendu's got all of that covered. Now, on the right side, we're plugging into things. We have the Excel add-in. This is a plugin for Microsoft Excel. It provides a nice native connection between 1010 Data and Excel. It's a bidirectional connection, so it allows you to take data in 1010, run a query, and pull that result down as a sheet in an Excel workbook. It also lets you take a sheet from an Excel workbook and upload that as a new table in 1010. I mentioned that pretty much all databases have ODBC drivers, so do we. This driver is going to let you plug into a wide variety of third-party tools. Tableau, Power BI, WebFocus, Cognos, those types of tools connect to 1010 through ODBC. It's a 3.0 compliance ODBC driver, so that's what you're going to be using if you're plugging into a lot of third-party tools. We have two types of software development kits. We categorize them as application development focused SDKs and more data science focused SDKs. Up until now, we've had SDKs for .NET, Java, and R. We also have an SDK for C and C++, though These days, people are looking for a little bit more modern languages. The application development SDKs, these are going to be used to build really tight integration on top of 1010. Some of our partners work with these to build the tools that you connect to 1010 through. In other cases, you're just building your own application that's specific to the data that you're working with or your business. The data science SDKs, you have a question?
Sorry, question. So you presented AI in the middle. Is that a new platform database system created by your company?
No, so this is just 1010 Data, the product that you are familiar with. This is the, the web UI, that whole thing.
So it's not like a new platform database?
No. This is, it's the same database that you've been working with, for the whole time. So the data science SDKs, these are going to provide you with a nice interface to connect to your more interactive interpreted languages. Here, the goal is to enable you to sort of mesh the tools in those languages with 1010. So let's talk about how we fix things, how we've changed things. So first off, a couple things to highlight. So 10up now supports flat files. This is a big step forward. We're very happy to announce this. So for people automating uploads of flat file data, it's fixed width, CSV, etc., you're going to be able to do that with a command line tool that integrates well with your ETL orchestration platforms. You're not going to need to build an application on top of the power loader anymore. It's just going to be, you point 10up at the file, and it works. So let's talk a little more detail about some of these other things. So we're happy to announce a partnership with Logi Analytics. Logi is a report building tool, and it offers a bunch of really nice, compelling things that we can't quite do on our own in 1010. The biggest one of those is Logi lets you bring together a bunch of data from different sources that might not yet be in 1010. Maybe it's for compliance reasons, maybe you can't host it in our cloud. So Logi is going to enable you to do that type of integration. It's a report building tool. You can orchestrate things with .NET and Java. The queries are written in SQL. It's pretty easy to work with, and it produces really beautiful charts. Is it a question? So Logi connects to 1010 using some of the tools I'll actually talk about in a minute, but it's built on top of the application development SDKs. This is an example of a partner who's leveraging those SDKs to build a really tight integration with 1010. So Logi is great. As I said, we have a couple of customers who are currently using it, and it's been a very big success for them. So we encourage you to take a look at what they have to offer. And here I want to take a little bit more time to talk about what we're doing here. So we have our new .NET and Java SDKs. When I said these were updates, update really doesn't do justice the changes we made here. This is really a complete refactor, a total overhaul from the floor to the ceiling. Has anyone here worked with our Java or .NET SDK up until now? OK, so the legacy SDKs had a couple of shortcomings. So first, the old design was monolithic. We had this single object. Every single interface to connect to 1010 was all attached to this one object. That object itself was what's called a singleton object. You had to have a single instance of it in your entire application. This is not intuitive for modern application developers. It's not what they're looking for. Doesn't feel like .NET, doesn't feel like Java. Our new SDK is object-oriented from the ground up. So instead of this big, single, monolithic object, we've got objects for your session, for your query, for your result sets, for directories. All the things you would expect to be encapsulated in a normal object model are now represented in that way. So I'm going to apologize to anyone who is not an engineer who doesn't read code. I'm just going to spend a minute here. So the old SDK, so this is what we have kind of on the left. We sort of create this big, monolithic object. You're going to use it for all the functions, everything you're interacting with. And our old SDK was essentially a very thin wrapper around our CSDK. So these things are both still built on top of the CSDK. And we do that so you can get the performance and the reliability that the CSDK provides in connections to 1010. So the old legacy design was this very thin wrapper. It wasn't ideal. You had to do very manual error checking. Frequently, you get different types of errors in each condition. This is not very conducive. So our new design is a lot more modern. We would move to an exception-based error model. As you can see, each object is representing what it sort of semantically encapsulates on the 1010 side. And it's going to produce cleaner, more elegant code. It's a lot more maintainable. But broadly, we had these 5 tenets when rebuilding the SDK, all the SDKs that we've rebuilt. So the first thing is parallel multi-threaded programs. Most people who are building things on top of 1010 want to not just leverage 1010 scale, they want to leverage its concurrency. They want to run a bunch of things all at once. This was hard to do with the old SDK. I'm very happy to say the new ones are designed with multi-threading from the start. All the objects and all the methods on those objects are fully thread safe. You no longer have to worry about facilitating locking and synchronization yourselves. That's handled transparently. So you could have 100 threads all using a single session object, and the SDK will be completely fine with that. It will serialize on the server side. Each session is going to represent a single thread of concurrency on 1010. But what this is going to enable is it's going to make it a lot easier, remove a lot of debugging overhead that people got when building these multi-threaded applications. Second thing is wide contracts. This is a computer science term. And a problem people experienced with these legacy SDKs was if you passed invalid input into certain functions, it caused the whole thing to crash. This is running in your web server, and it's running all your other applications. If we nuke the whole web server, it's not a good experience. So the new SDKs are designed with wide contracts. Any input is valid. It's going to be well defined. If it's not a input that the function is expecting, you'll get an exception. So this is sort of what you're expecting, the behavior in a more modern language. Resource management has been made a whole lot easier. If we hop back to here, we have this using keyword here. Essentially what this does is it lets you say, I am going to deallocate this object as soon as I exit the using block. So for the languages that have support for active garbage collection like this, we enable, so all the methods, or all the objects have dispose methods. Who here is familiar with what a SAM pool is? So I've got 5 or 6 hands. So a SAM pool is a mechanism that you use to get multi-threaded access to 1010. I want to have a single set of credentials that map to 10 IDs on the server side. The problem with this is if you allocate an ID and you start using it and you kind of just forget about it, the server still thinks you're using it. And as a consequence, you can end up utilizing all the IDs in your SAM pool when in fact no work is getting done. So this improved resource management is going to make that happen a lot less. So you're building applications, it's going to be much harder to orphan all the IDs in your SAM pool. It's going to make it so you have to pay less attention to focusing on that. As I touched on already, we've moved to exception-based errors. This is what people working in Java and .NET would expect. So there's not a lot to say there other than this code looks a lot nicer than that is really what that is. And finally, native result export. So for languages that have standardized data containers, and in .NET the example will be a data table, our SDKs now have the ability to natively export the result of your query into that language native data container. So if you're working with 100 billion row result set, it's probably not going to work well if you're to pull that whole thing into memory. But if you know that your result sets are going to be modestly sized, if they're going to work, fit in memory on your machine, it might be a lot more convenient to just say, give it to me as a data table. Other interfaces know how to use that. I know how to use that. So where appropriate or where available, we've switched, or we additionally offer that as a type of data export. So pushing forward, now in addition to an R package, we also have a Python package. So in the data science space, our sort of key themes here to help connect you as an R or Python programmer as closely with 10.10 as we can. R and Python programmers very frequently like to build, so they live in their interpreted language. It's very nice. And so we want to make sure that you don't have to hop out back and forth on that. So as far as functionality goes, we're trying to do everything you can do in the UI, you can do in these packages. So this is going to enable you to, GUI 2 is pretty great. I've liked all the demos I've seen today. But if command line is more your thing, if you want to be in your interpreter, this is what this is going to enable. So this will allow you to leverage the scale of 10.10 while still having a tight coupling to your favorite data science visualization packages. So we've also, and this is true in both the Python and R packages as well as the .NET and Java packages, we've put a huge amount of focus on documentation. It used to be these tools, you sort of got a reference manual, and that was it. Now we have user guides, help you get started. They're full of examples. It's really going to help lower the learning curve when spinning up on these projects. They'll come with packages. The .NET SDK, for example, has a bunch of sample Visual Studio projects. Just double click, and they should run without any modification. You'll have to put your passwords in, but out of the box, we're looking to make it so it's really easy to get spun up on these tools. I'm going to do a quick demo just to show off what these tools look like. So this is the Python SDK. So we got some imports. I'm going to be showing off an example with pandas as well as matplotlib. This is just getting things imported. And here what we have is I'm going to be connecting to the production 10.10 servers. This is a live demo, so knock on wood as far as the internet goes. So here we can see the with idiom. That's the same as using in .NET. So we have that same type of resource management, so we don't have to worry about deallocating objects manually. And here we're going to build a query. So essentially what this query is doing, it's connecting to a retail demo data set. It's connecting to a sales detail table. It's giving you all the values newer than September 1st, 2011. We're building a month column. We're tabulating by month and departments and summing up sales. We're looking at anything greater than 10 million in terms of sales volume. So here's how you run the query. It's just query.run. Again, this is a much more intuitive, easy-to-use interface than some of our prior tools. So now let's talk about what I was saying with native export. So we have this thing right here. We have q2.dictSlice. This is going to export a Python dictionary of lists. This is what pandas takes as its standard input to build a pandas data table. So we're going to build a pivot table with pandas. So here we have month along the left, departments across the top, sum of sales. Got some NAs here. And this is all in Python. This was done by pandas. So pandas is a tool that's very trendy these days. A lot of data scientists like working with it. We can also do some visualization. So here, this is going to be plotting a heat map. The internet is going to take just a second. I'm connected through X windows, so you'll bear with me. But what we're doing here is just setting up a bunch of the labels and the titles, axes. But hypothetically, if the internet stays strong, we should be able to see a heat map get generated. So, again, fingers crossed for the internet. Ta-da, there we go. So this was generated client-side. This isn't done on 10.10. 10.10 ran the query, but we pulled the data down into Python and produced this nice chart. And I have another quick chart, but I'm not sure I want to take a ton of time sitting here staring at this. So maybe we'll switch back to PowerPoint at this point, just because that's taking a little bit of time. And press forward. So that's what our new SDKs look like. It's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot cleaner. It's a much better connection to the system. These are live now. If you go to 1010data.com, on the support tab, you'll see technical interfaces, and that's where you can download all of these tools. The documentation is in the documentation center. It's the same place you get documentation for the query language and the UI. is going to have all the docs for these tools. So now what do we do? We've done some good stuff. We've rebuilt these SDKs. What are we doing in the future? So I mentioned 10up earlier. We talked about that. We have a new upload tool. It's called 10clone. I'm going to do a demo of that shortly, so we'll talk about that in a minute. We're adding upload support to all of the SDKs. It's rolling out incrementally. So the R1010 package has already got upload support, and the Python package is got some upload support, but doesn't support all the types of uploads we want. All the SDKs by the end of this quarter are going to support all the types of uploads that we want to be able to work with. This is both uploading flat files as well as uploading data objects from within the language. Want to enable that sort of cyclic type of application that's pulling data down from 1010, manipulating it, pushing result sets back up. We're really excited to announce that we're going to be integrating very tightly with S3 moving forward. If you store data in an S3 bucket, you're going to be able to transparently upload that data into 1010 without any sort of FTP or transfer. We'll just share that S3 bucket with us, and we'll be able to import the data automatically. We're also going to be supporting S3 as a target for data download. So if I want to run a report and have it dump the results to my S3 buckets, that's going to be supported as well. We're targeting Q1 of next year for that. And we're very excited to announce our connection with Talend. Talend is an ETL and data orchestration tool. It's going to make it really easy to connect your data ingress pipelines with 1010, so you can manipulate, move things around. It's a really fun tool to work with. It's very easy, and we're really excited to be rolling out that partnership. So you'll recognize this slide. So how are things changing? So one thing, we are not sunsetting anything. If you have existing workflows on things like the power loader, well, we are hoping you'll start using things like 10up. We are going to continue to support those. So now we're going to have 10clone in addition to 10up. I'm again going to put a pin in that for my demo. But now for your ETL and data orchestration, you have 10do and Talend. And on this side, now we're getting the bidirectional arrows for both of our SDKs. So this is how things are changing in the next 6 months. So what's this 10clone thing that I've been talking about? So 10clone is a tool. Oh, look, see, the Python finished. So 10clone is a tool that is built around 10up. So I mentioned 10up connects to a source database. You give it a query, takes the results of that query, and puts it in 1010. I mentioned in the very beginning that one of the comments we got is, 10up is great, but I have to build an automation around it. It'd be nicer if we have something that just migrated my database. I care about this entire subsection of my schema. I also want to mirror that with 1010 every day. So this is what 10clone does. So this is a MySQL database. It's got a bunch of stuff in it. So we've got some metadata. That's the information schema, performance schema, and sys and MySQL are. We have Sequila and Hive. Those are the actual databases with data in them. There's metadata in the other ones. But Sequila is a sample movie database, and Hive is the actual database backend to a Hive cluster we have installed. So again, live internet-facing demos, nothing up my sleeves. We've got, this is the production live real 1010 system. We have this Discover 2017 folder. There is nothing in the folder. It is empty. So now what we're going to do is hop over here. We're going to run 10clone. So it asks for a 1010 data username and a password. And here we are giving it this is going to be a DSN connection string for the MySQL database. So right here what we have is I've installed the ODBC driver for MySQL, and I set up a connection for it. So we're going to put that in, and then tell it where to put the data. So test.discover 2017. And so right now, what 10clone is doing is it's connected to the MySQL database. It's connecting to 1010 data. It's creating folders in the object manager. And the number one feature request we get for 10up is give it a progress bar. And the limitation with 10up specifically is that the ODBC standard doesn't allow you to actually know how big a result set is until you've scrolled through the whole thing. So 10up could have a progress bar, but it would just, as soon as it knew what the progress was, you're already done. Here we have a progress bar because this is actually the progress of loading all the tables. We know how many tables are in the system. Because 10clone is database aware, it understands what the metadata in the databases are, so it can be a lot smarter about that. It knows not to upload the metadata tables that are specific to MySQL. It knows what's real data and what's not. So at this point, we have finished. This is a single-threaded upload. 10clone supports fully multi-threaded upload using SAM pools. So you have a SAM pool with 5 IDs. You can upload your data, exactly 5 at once. So now back over here, this is the same tab. Let's close this. Let's open the object manager again. And hypothetically, now there's, look, we have Hive and we have Sequila. And so here are all the tables. 10clone is not creative when it comes to naming things. But it's very flexible. If you want to specify how things are named, where things are loaded, I want to blacklist some tables. Don't upload this one. Maybe you want to do a whitelist. I just want to upload everything in this subsection. It's very flexible in that regard. It's going to make it a lot easier to migrate your system. So now that, look, here's my other chart from Python that took some time pulling things through the internet. But that's what we've got. I'd be happy to take some questions now if anyone wants to know more information about anything. Yes?
10clone, what you just showed.
Mm-hmm.
Can I specify requirements like criteria, like only this date range or something like that, or is that just kind of sticking to 10up?
So 10clone lets you specify it. 10clone is built around 10up. So pretty much anything you can do in 10up, you can do in 10clone. So what you would be doing in that specific regard is saying, I want to add an addendum query to a particular table. You can specify in its config file, for this specific table, I want you to, in addition to just pulling the data out, I want you to run an extra query on top of it. So that's supported. By the way, we expect to release 10clone by the end of this year. So while everything else I've shown, you can go and download now, that one is not quite ready for prime time. So other questions for me about any of the things I've talked about, connectivity with 1010? All right, thank you very much. Oh, Adam?
What about the concept of like a view or a
That's something during design, that was one of the pieces of feedback that we got. So the question is, what about a view or something like that where it's not a real table in the source database? So by default, 10clone is just going to, for views that are not marked as data manipulation views, where it's just what 1010 would call a quick query, it'll eval the view and upload it. But what we have thought about is, because 10clone is metadata aware, it can look at the database's metadata and get more info than just the actual data. We can look at things like primary keys. We can say we have these tables, they exist, and we're currently working on a feature to automatically generate 1010 data quick queries that do things like smartly link together the tables that have been uploaded along the primary keys, which we understand that's what you're going to be joining on in the database. So does that answer your question? Yes? Absolutely. So if you have Hadoop installed, there is a Hive ODBC driver that will provide an ODBC interface that's sort of around your Hadoop data lakes and whatnot. When I said all databases have ODBC drivers, I wasn't kidding. So anything that has an ODBC driver, 10up and 10clone are both going to be able to integrate with. And that includes Hadoop. We've done testing there. That's why we had the Hive database in the MySQL instance. That was for Hadoop testing.
So from back, that's basically copy the data from there to your data system, right?
Correct.
Is there a way that you don't copy, just provide some query to generate the view out of it, generate the map you just don't copy the data system, your system will also copy.
So you want to keep the data resident in the source database and not mirror it in 1010? So we are looking in some experimental things on that right now, but we're not ready to pull the covers off of that yet. Any other questions? All right, thank you everyone. I really hope that you take a look at some of these tools. If you've been using some of the legacy things, we've really made a lot of improvements, and the goal is to make the quality of your life easier. So upgrading is sometimes a bit of an effort, but what you're going to get is better quality of life moving forward. The next time you're building an application, your life's going to be a lot easier. There'll be less support. It's going to be a better interaction overall. So again, thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions after the fact, I'll be in the Hawaiian shirt at the bar.